Creatures have 6 stats, right? Strength, constitution, and so on. There's a hidden statistic sitting there in a monster stat block. It's not really hidden. I mean, it is right there, but the problem is you don't see it, or you don't pay attention to it. If your monster is a spellcastery type, you might pay attention to it. If it's a lich, it will stand out. If it's some sort of lore master creature of death and arcane trickery, it'll be noticeable. Okay folks, we're talking about the intelligence stat. And this video will highlight why it's both the most important stat and most important thing about a creature. A creature's intelligence provides a DM with guidance. It tells you exactly how you should spend the creature's rounds. It tells you who to attack. It tells you what the greatest threat is. It tells you when to be reckless, and it also tells you when to back off. It tells you when you're hungry and what you're hungry for. You might be wondering, how does intelligence tell you and answer all of these questions? This is all better illustrated by pulling up 2 creatures, each a CR3 monster. We have the Owlbear and the Bugbear Chief. Let's do a quick comparison and talk through the things that are obvious. The things that don't have to do with intelligence, which, quite frankly, is an attribute about these two that seems rather insignificant. On paper, we have 2 thuggish brutes. By the end of the video, I hope to open your eyes to what the intelligence stat offers. Each of these creatures has a ton of hit points and similar movement. The Bugbear is harder to hit because of armor, but the defensive capability, that which helps keep a thing alive, is based around each of these creatures' thickness, which is basically represented by loads of hit points. A quick glance at stats remind us that each of these creatures is really strong, but let's gloss over stats for now. Looking over the traits and actions of each highlights the one major point of concentration. These guys are melee combatants. They hit really hard, and combined with loads of hit points, we have some ideas on how these sort of fights should run. The Bugbear has a few more moving parts than the Owlbear, with its Heart of Rugek, Surprise Attack, and Brute traits, the latter of which screams to us about what this guy is all about. It's a brute, as is the Owlbear. Take a brief moment and look over the damage potential of each. The Bugbear does have a javelin, but as mentioned, these guys dish out pain through melee combat, especially considering the Bugbear's Brute trait, which only applies to melee attacks. Now that we've settled all of this, let's get to the point of the video. Where and how does intelligence play into things? The Owlbear has a 3 intelligence, the Bugbear 11. Let's not compare those scores to a high-level wizard. Let's make some comparisons to each other. Between these 2 creatures, there's an 8-point difference. Focus on that and play your monsters accordingly. As CR3 creatures, it could be left there, and other than description, storyline, and environment, an encounter with each of these creatures could easily feel the same. Therein lies the first point I'd like to make, by focusing on intelligence. An 8-point difference screams to me that these creatures are drastically different, and they need to be played as such. Let's begin with the Owlbear. A CR3 intelligence tells us that this thing will function on instinct. It will be primal, animalistic, raw, and simple. When you have a low intelligence creature, lean into one thing, a single thing that dictates how you use it within combat rounds. In this particular case, the thing we lean into is its melee power, multi-attacks using a claw and beak. That's it. You can play into the dark vision and keen sight and smell as you set up the encounter, but otherwise, lean into one thing, its melee attacks. That's what a 3 intelligence tells us. A 3 intelligence tells us that an owlbear won't take time to move towards a more threatening PC. A 3 intelligence tells us that an owlbear won't track down the PC with the lowest armor class. An owlbear deals tremendous damage to things within 5 feet of it. As long as an enemy is within 5 feet, requirements are met for that one thing, melee power. At 3 intelligence, constantly ask yourself this one question. Can the creature do the one thing it's trying to do? If the answer is yes, on your go as the DM, do that thing. Ignore the rogue in the corner, sneaking off with the magic item. Ignore the ranger, dealing more damage from 100 feet away. Ignore the caster sitting in the back with a 13 armor class. Though it's not to your advantage to attack an AC 21 fighter, if it's the fighter that is within melee range, that's who you should be attacking. In this manner, the primal and instinctual nature of the owlbear adds a level of predictability, a level that the PCs can exploit. You must allow this, and not just for the benefit of the PCs, but for the benefit of the world and the game as a whole. It makes creatures feel unique and believable. To illustrate this, let's contrast the owlbear with the bugbear. On paper, it's a brutish thing with devastating melee potential and a ton of hit points. Let's mostly ignore the bugbear's traits and look to its melee power, as we did with the owlbear. The difference is, the bugbear has a much higher intelligence. A creature with a moderate level of intelligence thinks through options. The bugbear knows its strength, which is Hulk smashing with a Morning Star. It can throw a javelin at PCs in the back, but it just wants to Hulk smash with the Morning Star. That's what it's best at, and it knows this. The PCs will soon know it. And 11 intelligence speaks to options. So how do you play those options? First off, the bugbear will consider the source of incoming damage. If the tanky AC 21 fighter is using the dodge action, they aren't dealing much damage. At face value, the fighter and the rest of the group assume the bugbear is a brutish thing because, again, on paper, it seems to be similar in stature and capability to the owlbear that they just fought. This is not the case, and a much higher intelligence allows you as the DM to play it differently. When the fighter doesn't deal damage because of going defensive, the bugbear ignores it, moves out of melee, and provokes an attack of opportunity. Then, it beelines right to the AC 13 sorcerer and smacks the hell out of him. This action alone changes the dynamic of the fight. It forces a change in tactics from the PCs. Another example of using the bugbear's intelligence is attacking fallen enemies. After a round of crazy die rolls, the bugbear smashes the sorcerer, dropping them into death saves. With a cleric and paladin in the party, the sorcerer is gonna make it, so long as they get to the sorcerer before failing 3 death saves. This might be the case against the owlbear. Our bugbear knows better. They understand how this yo-yo stabilized thing works, just as the 11 intelligence fighter in your party does. The bugbear doesn't use the rest of its round to move towards another threat after dropping the sorcerer. Instead, it uses its second attack to smash the fallen sorcerer, making sure it isn't mostly dead, but truly dead. As the sorcerer is suffering from the unconscious condition, the bugbear auto-crits in melee range, resulting in 2 failed death saves immediately. Notice how drastically the combat has changed when your bugbear does these sorts of things. Notice how the level of intensity and lethality has ramped up by focusing not on the strength of the bugbear, but its intelligence. I'll leave it there, as we've essentially killed the PC already. So where was I going with this? Play into and within the guidelines provided by a creature's intelligence. The tricks and shenanigans used by the bugbear might seem unfair, and to the player that's playing the sorcerer, it might seem like you're targeting that person unfairly. Whether it's unfair or not is for you to decide. But it does balance out when you run your encounters, and your owlbear in this particular case, differently. So long as you do this for each creature based on their intelligence, in the end, it all works itself out. Don't run everything as spellcaster versus martial. Don't run everything as melee versus ranged. Don't run everything as tank and spank versus kite and run. Run it based on intelligence, and when you do, you'll notice how incredible your encounters will become. That's all I have for you folks. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.